The objective was to make sure we set aside a little bit of water, even in dry years, so you can always deliver water at the start of the following year. When the Goulburn Early Reserve policy came in, we didn't introduce something similar on the Murray. The reason we didn't do that was because there was still work to be done with the other states to make sure that operation of the river was secure. And that work's now been done. There's also a shared reserve to make sure the river can be run. And with that in place, the committee looked at some modelling of how effective having a similar reserve on the Murray system was. And it's a pretty good story. It reduces some of the years we saw recently, like 2008-9 and 2009-10, where water couldn't be delivered early or couldn't be delivered to everyone early, particularly in Murray Valley. There were some quite significant equity issues there. On the Murray, it's not quite as effective on the Goulburn, particularly under the model climate change scenarios, but it does go a long way to bridging some of that gap. Under some of the more significant climate change scenarios, it doesn't guarantee you can deliver water every year. But if you were to plan for those really extreme years, you'd have to set aside an unacceptably high amount. So it does make a good positive difference. Under all the years in the historic sequences, it solves the problem. The other thing to note is the amount set aside in early reserve on the Goulburn and also the Murray will be reduced because of the delivery efficiencies that we're getting through the GMW connection program. So what modernisation does is it reduces the losses in the delivery system. Now it converts those losses into entitlements, so it doesn't result in an increase of reliability, but the extent to which it reduces the fixed losses to fill up the channels at the start of the year, it means you've got less of a gap in those really dry years to running the system. So modernisation on its own does part of the job that the reserve policy does. So it's sensible to reduce the amount that is set aside in that early reserve to recognise that. So in the future we'll continue to start setting aside reserve at the same time, but we won't need to set aside quite as much before we get to 100%. So I think what that means practically for you on the ground is generally that you reach 100% high reliability allocations a little bit quicker than you have compared to the last couple of years when we've had to set aside a bit more early in reserves.